So obviously the draft is great where you bring in new talent, but unfortunately they usually have to take the spot of someone else. And it is what it is. It is a dog-eat-dog world. And hey, the best player is going to get the job. And that's the problem about being an NFL veteran. You usually have a larger contract, and there's always going to be someone younger and cheaper, maybe faster and stronger trying to take your job. But what can you do? So we have 7 Vikings whose role could be in trouble depending on what goes down in the draft. So let's start off right away, and let's start off controversially. KJ Osborne. So, adios mio. All right, so KJ Osborne stepped up year 2, really had a bust-out season, really established himself as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, and I think that he played phenomenal last year, but it is what it is. You got Jefferson at 1, you have Thielen at 2, and the new regime just extended Thielen. They made a financial commitment to him, so his role isn't changing or going anywhere. And KJ, I mean, the new regime, they didn't draft him, they didn't coach him, they weren't part of his big season last year, and I think that his role could be up in the air, especially if they do take a wide receiver in the first round, like a Drake London or a Garrett Wilson or an Olave or a Treylon Burks, etc. Or even in the second round, say they take a guy like Sky Moore or Christian Watson or whatever. I think that even though stylistically not a one-for-one match with most of these guys, I think KJ, I mean, his role could be knocked down from a wide receiver 3 to a wide receiver 4 and then playing some special teams. Now, I do believe in KJ. I think that he's going to fight for every single inch, every single reception, every single snap either way, but he could be impacted depending on what the Vikings do in the draft. Next up, not so controversial this time around, Garrett Bradbury. Yes. Now, Bradbury's job may already be gone because I think Chris Reed, they're going to give him a long, hard look at center as well as Jesse Davis at right guard. But especially if they do take Tyler Linderbaum at 12 or in the first round, if they maneuver, gone. Zion Johnson, if they maneuver, gone. So I think that the Vikings, if they rack up and stack up some interior offensive line talent that does have some experience at the pivot, or you have a guy like Cole Strange from Chattanooga in the second round, I think that Garrett Bradbury, his time in the middle may be limited. Next up, Viking who could be impacted depending on what happens in the draft. Cornerback Cameron Tiny Dancer. Now, Patrick Peterson is back. I think that he is going to be starting no matter what. You do give that little bit of leeway to the veteran. And Dancer, you know what, Dancer, when he didn't start last year, when Bashad Breeland was signed and took over for him, he didn't take it well. He just didn't. Like he did not have the most mature response to competition. He did get some time towards the end of the season. He didn't replicate the success that he had on the back end of his rookie season. But, I mean, the Vikings certainly could be looking to add cornerback, especially high at 12. Maybe it's Sauce Gardner. Maybe it's Derek Stingley Jr. Maybe it's Booth. Maybe it's McDuffie, whatever. Or on day 2, there's going to be a ton of talented cornerbacks in this class. And either way, I mean, Dancer, he has to respond better to competition because even if he's knocked down to cornerback 4 and he's behind Shondon or Hairston, whatever, in the slot, and he's third string on the outside, he's going to have to suck it up because he will get opportunities. Like, he will have his chances, and he can't be crying in the breast milk, potentially even talking about trade. Can't do that. Next up, Viking number 4, whose role can be impacted depending on who was drafted, Kellen Mond. So Kellen Mond was not drafted by this regime, was not coached by this regime, but that also may be a blessing. Well, why don't you want to see Kellen Mond? I see him in practice every day. Please, get the hell out of here. But, again, what's most important is that Kwesi did not draft him. Now, they could go in a different direction. Like, maybe, I don't see the Vikings going quarterback in the first round, but maybe, say, a guy like Sam Howell falls down to 46, and the Vikings just see him has too much value in that spot. Or maybe Carson Strong on Nevada gets to the Vikings in the third round, and they take Kellen Mond's spot as a potential quarterback of the future. A guy that Kevin O'Connell signs off on, Kwesi likes as well, the scouting department enjoys, and then they check that box, and then they can work with them to be the quarterback of the future. And then Kellen Mond is just sort of in the wind, even though I still believe in the pride of Texas A&M. Gig 'em. Next up, Vikings, whose role could be impacted depending on what happens in the draft. So we got Jesse Davis and Chris Reed. Now, pending what happens with center, maybe they do believe in Bradbury. I don't know. But Chris Reed, Jesse Davis are going to compete and get after it at right guard. Maybe even Wyatt Davis, no matter what. But say the Vikings do commit to Bradbury for whatever reason, and say they draft a Zion Johnson or a Kenyon Green or a starting caliber interior offensive lineman. I mean, even though right now you can pretty safely pencil one of them in starting at right guard, maybe someone just comes in and blows it up. Or hell, maybe Wyatt Davis gets the time of day and he shows up and shows out as well. Who really knows? Next up, Viking number 6, whose role can be impacted depending on what happens in the draft, Irv Smith Jr. So a little bit controversial. Irv coming back from that meniscus in year 4, wanting some more. He should blow up in this offense. He should be a very big part of the passing game. But maybe the Vikings, again, this regime did not draft him. Maybe they have some questions about that knee. And maybe, even though this isn't a top-tier tight end class, maybe they dip into the middle rounds and take a pass catcher for the future. Maybe Isaiah Likely from Coastal Carolina. Maybe Trey McBride from Colorado State. Maybe Jeremy Ruckert from Ohio State. I don't think that you can safely say that in 2 years, Irv Smith is going to be the Vikings tight end 1. And maybe it's a spot where if they do spend a 3rd or 4th round pick on a tight end, they slot him in as a 1A, 1B situation with Irv, what he's dealt with over the last couple of years. So his role may be diminished. Lastly, Viking number 7, whose role could be changed depending on what happens in the draft, Alexander Mattison. So right now, Mattison is seen as the de facto power back. But what if the Vikings actually spend a draft pick on a running back who's got that power? Where I think Madison is great all-around back. Same thing with Dalvin, same thing with Kincaid. But what if they just bring in a battering ram for short yard situations? Like talk about Brian Robinson Jr. from Alabama, Jerome Ford, great name, the pride of Cincinnati, or Zamir White, Zeus coming in from Georgia. I think that you could see Alexander Madison's role being impacted because Madison right now is seen as the short yardage guy. But obviously Dalvin is a well-rounded running back. But what if they bring in just an absolute hammer for the goal line spots or 3rd and inches spots, and then Kincaid continues to rise up and get some more of those backup running back touches as well. Yeah, it could be an interesting spot for Alexander Mattison. But that's it. Let's take a look at 7 Vikings whose roles could significantly change depending on what happens in the draft. Anyways, let us know your thoughts on our thoughts on the list in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work? Put a little something in the Venmo. But until next time, Skol, production value.